Yo, how's it going everybody? You got Sketch here and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode we're checking out a first-person shooter that's been in early access on PC and the Xbox Game Pass and is coming out with a physical release later on this year, which will be an awesome addition to any FPS fans collection. We're looking at Prodeus, developed by Bounding Box Software and published by Humble Games, releasing in September of 2022. This retro-inspired yet new school shooter is an awesome throwback to mid-90s and mid-2000s FPS games, with tons of weapons and even more pixelated carnage with a modern feel. What's interesting to note here, this is the creation of ex-Raven Software employees who wanted to strike off and do their own thing, and the result is pretty tight. Before getting too far ahead, let's check out the story. The story is pretty simple. You're a corrupted agent of Prodeus, and your only goal is to tear it up from the inside out. You'll battle through 31 stages cut amongst 4 zones, and beyond racking up a high score, you'll be racking up a commando level body count. Gameplay wise, you get a first person shooter that graphically wears its old school influence on its sleeve, with the feel of Doom 2016 as far as controls and abilities. With the potential 18 weapons at your disposal, you're a force to be reckoned with, dumping clips in vicious fashion. You'll make your way through each stage, decimating whatever's in your path and gaining upgrades and additional weaponry. As you venture through the world map, you'll see a few different types of stages you can traverse, from challenge areas with specific weapons and items to shops where you can purchase upgrades with found gold bars. Gold bars are scattered amongst the map, and there are several you won't be able to quite get to without said upgrades. The upgrades will have a familiar feel to Doom 2016 and Eternal, like the air dash and double jump, alongside OG Doom perks like Berserk mode and invincibility. You get a wide assortment of weapons over time, starting with a pistol and your fist, which will quickly evolve into shotguns, sniper rifles, submachine guns, and plasma rifles, all of which straight up melt your ops like a sundae on a hot summer day. The rocket and grenade launchers are both devastating and jib enemies to pulpy bits upon impact. Handguns and SMGs can be dual wielded, and these are great for crowd control, along with a chain gun which mows down any and everything in your path. Going through each stage, you'll find the Nexus crystals, which work as area checkpoints, and should you get smoked, you'll respawn here. Enemies will mob you before too long, and downed enemies will drop useful items like health and ammo pickups. You also need to find key cards to progress through each stage and unlock the next area before making your exit. This has a lot of principles from classic and modern FPS games rolled into one, including a handful of big boss encounters. You'll see a variety of enemy types, from weaponless grunts to flying brains that spawn in smaller enemies akin to Doom's Lost Souls, and enemies that move just as fast, if not faster than you, at least until you find more upgrades. You get a formidable crop of baddies to bash, and the game can throw a lot of them on screen at once. When the game takes the gloves off, chances are you're going to get clapped up a few dozen times on some stages, but once you figure out your movement and swapping between weapons, you'll quickly adapt and become a mobile stream of bullets and explosives. There's also a handful of boss encounters spread amongst the map, and these will test your mettle, but you've got enough firepower to level city blocks, so most bosses, once you figure out their patterns, won't be able to handle the smoke that you've got in your back pocket. These encounters will range from moderately difficult to challenging, so be prepared for some multitasking on the fly. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a laser. Graphics wise, Prodeus runs on the Unity engine, and its presentation looks like a cross between the build engine and the early id Tech engine pre-Doom 3. If the Brutal Doom mod and early id Tech were merged together, this is roughly the visual equivalent. You'll get modern day weapon models and behaviors with the jibs and gore effects of the Brutal Doom mod, and then some. The Unity engine is known for asset flipping in third-person games mainly, but this is a great use of the engine utilizing the modern conventions it's capable of. It has some remarkably fast movement speed, and the aesthetic of build engine games like Duke Nukem 3D, Blood, and the like are all well represented here. Being that it's the brainchild of ex-Raven Software employees, it makes sense why this plays and looks the way it does. Character models all have a slightly pixelated look that harken to the aesthetic of late 90s and early 2000s FPS games, and the detail is solid with its full 3D sprites. Weapon models are also killer here, often have some secondary fire options which all visually got a lot of punch to them. Enemy characters will come in a variety of sizes and gradually introduce new foes as the game goes on. Super enemies will have a blue sheen to them, and these enemies will move faster and hit a fair bit harder, making players switch up their attacks and get on their defensive. Stages all have a lot of moving parts, and finding each Nexus crystal will guide you down a mostly linear path on your initial run. Exploration is encouraged on subsequent runs, with the addition of upgrades allowing you to get to more of each stage, unearthing its secret areas. You get some dope lighting effects, and the environments all switch it up enough to make each area unique without overusing too many elements, which is awesome. Much of the environment has items to interact with, and in OG id Software fashion, certain items will trigger surprise swarms of enemies. You get a little bit of everything that made FPS classics memorable, with modern day cadence of current day shooters. Damage and gore effects are pretty sick here, allowing you to jib your enemies in glorious fashion, all with that retro aesthetic. The modern twist is that your character model will often be covered in viscera of your felled enemies. While it does wear off over time, you can just about reenact the end scene of Carrie to your heart's content here, all while bobbing and weaving through the legions of foes. Sound wise, there's some crunchy audio in here along with some raucous tunes for the journey. As you run the levels, the ambient sounds of your surroundings purse the speakers, until coming up on your encounters where more drone-like guitars sweep into the spectrum. Composers Andrew Holsholt and James Paddock laid down the soundtrack, and they've got some bangers in here, along with some sludgy drone-style notes shifting the tone between battles. Holsholt brings in a vibe similar to past works of 3D realms, and the style is noticeable with the signature late 90s metal feel, which you can also hear in the last Doom Eternal expansion, which he also scored. For those familiar with 90s to 2000s era FPS games, will notice the influences with clean modern day modulation. Sound effects are also nice and punchy here with some bone-cracking audio as you stomp through the overworld. Weapons all have some nice feedback, and the sounds will resonate differently depending on surroundings. The sniper rifle lets out a thunderous bang, and its component fire mode has a visceral spike that melts your ops instantly. Like games of the era, grunts and groans of enemies can be heard from a distance, though always be prepared for a few surprises at the end of the arena at a moment's notice. The Foley art of the environment also has some nice ambient notes, and the interaction with your surroundings also sounds good. From the crackling flames of wreckage to the conveniently placed exploding barrel from a distance all have some solid sound work, and the audio engine puts out some serious bass here especially. To wrap it all up, Prodeus is a dope first-person shooter and is a fun throwback to an era of shooters where it was just wild for the sake of it, delivering a really fun and challenging experience while having the replay value of revisiting areas to further upgrade your character. The user-generated levels also added the game with some pretty faithful recreations of classic levels from many franchises, along with unique levels of varying difficulty. This game will make you work for it on the initial run, but you're always equipped to get through those sections once you figure out optimal strategies. Prodeus gets an 8 out of 10 and comes recommended to FPS fans who like new or classic style games, as this is a good mix of both. It's got conventions of both, and with some quick-paced gameplay, making it a fun one to run through. This has been on Xbox Game Pass for a little while as an early access and now complete title, and the upcoming physical release for the Switch and PlayStation should be out sometime soon. This is a good one to scoop up if you're into FPS games, and it's got a little bit of something for everybody. And if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad to use it as a resource. Check back often, we'll have more reviews and commentaries come up in the near future. But until then, take it easy and stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next one.